The crisis music and the call. The shadow falls. Commander Sarachin stood in the observation deck of the orbital defense station Perseus, her reflection ghostly against the transparent aluminum viewport beyond the glass Earth hung like a blue jewel against the velvet darkness of space. But something was wrong. Dark patches were spreading across the planet's surface like ink bleeding through paper. The void plague had arrived. Sarah was 42 years old with streaks of premature gray in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many crises. She had served in Earth's Unified Space Command for 20 years, rising through the ranks during humanity's peaceful expansion into the stars. Now watching her home world succumb to an enemy they barely understood, she felt utterly helpless. "Commander, the latest reports are in," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, his young face pale with worry. He held a data pad. With trembling hands, "The void plague has consumed 17% of Earth landmass. Tokyo, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo have gone dark. We're losing communication with coastal cities across the Pacific." The void plague was not a disease in any conventional sense. It was a cosmic phenomenon that had appeared without warning 3 weeks ago, erupting from a spatial anomaly near Jupiter's orbit. The darkness it brought was absolute. It consumed matter, energy, and even light itself. Where it touched, everything simply ceased to exist. Scientists called it a dimensional collapse. Military strategists called it unstoppable, humanity's last hope. In the command center below the observation deck, Dr. James Econo hunched over a holographic display showing the void plague's expansion patterns. He was a theoretical physicist from Nigeria who had spent his career studying exotic space-time phenomena. Now his research had become humanity's only hope for survival. "The progression is accelerating," James said, his deep voice heavy with exhaustion. "At current rates, we have 72 hours before the void plague engulfs the entire planet. Our weapons are useless. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, anti-air torpedoes, they all disappear into the void without effect." General Patricia Morrison, head of Earth's Defense Command, slammed her fist on the conference table. She was a Batley-hardened veteran with silver hair, cut military short, and a scar across her left cheek from the colony wars 2 decades ago. "There has to be something we can do. We didn't survive the colony wars, the Titan rebellion, and the Mars famine just to be erased by some cosmic anomaly. There is one possibility," James said quietly, "but it requires resources and technology we don't possess." Everyone in the room turned to look at him. James manipulated the holographic display, bringing up complex equations and energy diagrams. "The void plague is essentially a tear, the fabric of spacetime. To stop it, we need to generate a massive harmonic resonance field that can seal the dimensional breach. Think of it as stitching reality back together. But the energy requirements are astronomical. We would need quantum resonators operating at frequencies our current technology cannot achieve, exotic matter we haven't learned to synthesize, and spatial anchoring systems that are beyond our engineering capabilities." The room fell silent. They all understood what he was saying. Earth alone could not save itself. Memories of kindness. Admiral Robert Tanaka sat in his private quarters aboard the flagship Unity's Promise, reviewing files that most people had forgotten. He was 70 years old, one of the few remaining veterans of humanity's early exploration era. His quarters were filled with mementos from dozens of worlds, a crystalline flower from Kepler 442b, a woven tapestry from the Veyan system, a carved stone from the desert planet Aridus. Each item represented a mission where humanity had helped another species in need. Robert had been there for many of them. He remembered the Veyan fever outbreak 30 years ago. The Villians were a peaceful species of blue-skinned humanoids whose home world had been struck by a mutating virus. Their medical knowledge was insufficient to stop it. When their desperate plea reached Earth, most nations had voted to send only medical data and supplies, but Captain Maria Santos had defied orders, taking her hospital ship Mercy's hand directly into the quarantine zone. Robert had been her first officer then. They had spent 6 months on Veya working alongside local doctors, sharing human medical techniques and ultimately developing a cure that saved billions of Veyan lives. Maria had contracted the fever herself and nearly died when the Veyan Council had offered payment, rare minerals worth enough to fund Earth's space program for a decade. Maria had refused. We didn't come here for profit, she had said. We came because it was the right thing to do. Robert remembered the Kronar mining disaster on Titan's sister moon. The Kronars were an insectoid species whose mining operation had collapsed, trapping 3,000 workers beneath the ice. Human engineers had spent weeks drilling through frozen methane, sharing their rescue technology, working without rest, until every Kronar was safely extracted. The Kronar Queen had wept, a strange sight given her compound eyes, and declared humanity friends of the hive. Forever, there were so many others. The Zephyrians, whose atmospheric processors had failed, leaving their gas giant cities dying in toxic clouds until human technicians had repaired and upgraded their entire planetary infrastructure. The Luminar, whose star was dying prematurely, and human astrophysicists had helped them develop solar stabilization technology. The Turks, whose world had been struck by an asteroid, and human disaster relief teams had spent years helping them rebuild. Humanity had a reputation across the galaxy, not as conquerors or traitors, though they did both, but as helpers, as the species that showed up when others were in trouble, expecting nothing in return. Now Robert wondered if anyone remembered the transmission. The Emergency Council convened in the war room deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. World leaders appeared via hologram, their faces reflecting the same mix of fear and determination. President Elena Vov of the Unified Earth Government called the session to order. We have exhausted all conventional options, she said, her Russian accent thick with emotion. Dr. Akinko has presented a theoretical solution, but we lack the technology to implement it alone. General Morrison, Admiral Tanaka. What do you propose? Admiral Tanaka stood slowly, his aged joints creaking. We send out a call for help. Murmurs rippled through the council. Some were skeptical. Humanity had been largely isolated for the past 15 years, focused on internal development after the colony wars had strained relations with several alien civilizations. To whom exactly? Demanded Ambassador Chinny from the Asian coalition. We have trade agreements with a dozen species, but asking for military intervention against an existential threat they have no obligation to risk themselves for us, no legal obligation. Robert agreed, but perhaps a moral one. He activated a holographic display, showing a star map dotted with dozens of highlighted systems. Over the past century, humanity has provided significant assistance to 67 different alien civilizations. We have never asked for repayment. We have never leveraged these acts for political gain, but every species remembers. The question is whether gratitude and friendship mean anything in the face of cosmic disaster. Dr. Amamira Hassan, Earth's chief diplomat, leaned forward. She was an elegant woman from Egypt with silver street hair and kind eyes that had negotiated countless treaties. Admiral, you're suggesting we appeal to their sense of honor, their compassion. I'm suggesting we remind them that humanity has always answered when others called. Now we're calling. We'll see who answers back. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the decision was made. Earth would send out a distress signal to every species humanity had ever helped. It would include complete data on the void plague. Humanity's failed attempts to stop it, and Dr. Ian Kuo's theoretical solution, and it would include one simple message. The message goes out. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez sat at the communications array of the Deep Space Transmission Station on the lunar far side. She was 28, bright-eyed, and had joined the Space Command because she believed in humanity's better nature. Now she was tasked with sending what might be humanity's final message to the stars. Admiral Tanaka had written the message himself. Sophie read it one more time before transmission to all civilizations who remember Earth and humanity. We are facing extinction. Phenomenon we cannot stop is consuming our home world. We have fought with everything we possess, but we are not strong enough alone. We need help. We need technology we do not have, resources we cannot gather, and knowledge we have not yet discovered. We are asking for your aid. Humanity has always believed in helping those in need, expecting nothing in return. We hope that philosophy meant something. We hope someone remembers. If you can help us, please come. We are running out of time. Sophie's hands hovered over the controls. This felt too vulnerable, too desperate, but she thought about her family in Mexico City, now in the path of the advancing void. She thought about her friends, her colleagues, the billions of people on Earth who deserved a chance to survive. She pressed the button. The transmission burst outward in all directions, carried by quantum entangled relay stations humanity had helped build across dozens of star systems. The message would reach the Vayans within 6 hours, the Chronars in 12, the Zephyrians, Luminars, Turks, and dozens of others within a day, and then all humanity could do was wait. First responses. 18 hours passed. The void plague continued its relentless advance. Earth's population had been evacuated from the affected zones, but there was nowhere left to run. The colony ships could save perhaps 1 million people, but 8 billion called Earth home. Sarah Chin had not slept. She remained at her station, monitoring deep space sensors for any sign of incoming vessels. The probability of a response was low, she told herself. The distances were too vast, the risk too great. No civilization would commit resources to save another species. When Commander Marcus Webb's voice cracked with excitement, we're detecting spatial distortions at the edge of the solar system. Something big is coming through. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Show me. The holographic display lit up with energy signatures. One vessel emerged from faster than light travel. Then another, then three more. They were clearly alien in design, organic curves, instead of human geometric efficiency. Identifying transponder signals, Marcus said, his fingers flying across his console. It's Commander, it's the Vian. 5 medical support ships and 2 mobile research stations. Before Sarah could respond, another alert chimed. More contacts appearing. Northern Quadrant Kronar heavy construction vessels, dozens of them. Then another and another. Within the hour, ships were arriving from every direction. Zephyrian atmospheric processors, Luminar energy amplification arrays, Turks planetary shield generators, species that humanity had helped decades ago, were dropping everything and racing to Earth's aid. Admiral Tanaka stood in the command center, tears streaming down his weathered face as he watched the display fill with friendly contacts. 67 species. They had all answered. General Morrison's voice was thick with emotion. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vayan flagship. They say she paused, composing herself. They say they haven't forgotten what Captain Santos did for them. They say humanity taught them that the right thing to do is to help those in need. They say they're here to return the favor. Similar messages poured in from every arriving fleet. The Kronar sent word, friends of the Hive are never abandoned. Zephyrians transmitted, you gave us air to breathe. We give you hope. Luminar simply said, family helps. Family. Robert Tanaka looked at the Earth hanging in space, still bleeding darkness into the void, but now surrounding his home world, a fleet of hundreds of alien vessels had gathered, each one carrying the technology, resources, and expertise that Earth desperately needed. They had answered the call. Now the real work would begin. The fleet arrives, the assembly of hope. The space around Earth had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Hundreds of vessels from 67 different species orbited the dying planet in carefully coordinated patterns. Each ship was unique, reflecting the nature and technology of its builders. The Vayan medical vessels glowed with soft blue bioluminescent hulls. The Kronar construction ships bristled with mechanical appendages like enormous metal insects. The Zephyrian atmospheric processors floated like elegant silver clouds, while the Luminar energy arrays pulsed with contained stellar fire. Admiral Robert Tanaka stood in the center of the newly established coordination hub aboard the Unity's Promise, surrounded by holographic representations of alien commanders from across the galaxy. The technology to facilitate this meeting had been provided by the Nexi, a species of digital consciousness that humanity had helped recover from a catastrophic data corruption event 20 years ago. Now, they offered their advanced communication systems freely. This is unprecedented, said Commander Xylith of the Vayan fleet. Her blue skin shimmered under the lights in her large eyes, reflected genuine emotion. Never before have so many civilizations united for a single purpose. Earth called and we all answered, but we must act quickly. Your world does not have much time. Through the viewport behind the holographic conference, Sarah Chin could see the void plague's dark tendrils spreading across Earth's surface. The darkness had consumed 29% of the planet. Now Europe was gone. Most of Asia had vanished. Americas were being devoured from both Coast, Dr. James Anquo projected his harmonic resonance field equations into the shared holographic space. The theory is sound, he explained, his voice steady, despite his exhaustion. But implementation requires perfect synchronization across multiple technological paradigms. We need to create a resonance field that operates on 17 different dimensional frequencies. Simultaneously, each frequency must be generated by a different type of technology, and they all must harmonize precisely, or the dimensional tier will simply regenerate. A deep rumbling voice spoke from the Kronar delegation. Queen Kyrix, leader of the Kronar Hive Fleet, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Her massive form was transmitted via hologram, but her presence dominated the space. Human engineers helped us understand structural resonance. When our minds collapsed, we built our entire rescue operation on principles your people taught us. Our gravitational harmonics generators can provide 3 of the required frequencies. The Luminar collective can contribute stellar frequency energy modulation, said Archon Solarius, a being of pure energy, contained within a crystalline matrix. His voice resonated like sunlight given sound when our star began its premature death cycle. Human astrophysicists worked alongside our scientists for 5 years to stabilize it. We learned to manipulate stellar energies in ways we had never imagined. We will use that knowledge now to save your stars. Children, one by one, each species offered their unique capabilities. Zephyrins could generate atmospheric pressure frequencies. The Turks provided quantum entanglement synchronization. The Meridians, a species of musical beings whose world humanity had saved from sonic dissonance pollution, offered harmonic calibration that could link all the disparate technologies into a single unified system, bonds forged in memory. While the technical coordination continued, personal reunions were happening across the fleet. On the observation deck of the Vayan medical vessel Compassion's Light, Captain Maria Santos, now retired and 73 years old, stood face-to-face with Dr. Ayan, physician she had worked alongside 3 decades ago during the fever outbreak. Valuna's eyes glistened with tears. The Vayans had learned to cry from humans during that crisis, adopting the emotional expression as their own. Captain Santos, I never thought I would see you again. When we received Earth's call, I volunteered immediately. Every Villian who survived the fever wanted to come. You saved 5 billion of us. Now we save you. Maria embraced the alien doctor, her own eyes wet. You don't owe us anything, Vuna. We did what we did because it was right. Exactly, Valuna said softly, and now we do the same because you taught us what right truly mean. Similar scenes played out across the assembled fleet. Kronar workers who had been trapped in the Titan mining disaster met the human engineers who had drilled through kilometers of ice to rescue them. Zephyrian atmospheric technicians embraced human experts who had spent years repairing their dying cities. Young Turks warriors saluted aging human disaster relief workers who had helped rebuild their shattered world. After the asteroid impact, Lieutenant Sophie Martinez found herself hosting a delegation of singing whales from the Oceanic World Aquaria. Humanity had helped them develop protection against industrial sonic pollution that was destroying their migration patterns and cultural songs. The whales had traveled 3 months at maximum speed to reach Earth, bringing with them subsonic frequency generators that could operate in the deep ocean, a crucial component for the global resonance field. Your people sang with us, the eldest whale transmitted through her translation device, her massive eye regarding Sophie. With gentle intelligence, you learned our songs and helped us preserve them. Now we sing for you, we sing to save your ocean world, the gathering storm. In the war room beneath the Atlantic, now protected by a Turk's quantum shield. Generator hastily installed by grateful Turk's engineers, the tactical coordination reached a fever pitch. General Patricia Morrison coordinated with military commanders from 24 species who had sent defensive fleets to protect Earth while the resonance field was being constructed. The void plague was not just spreading, it was accelerating. Dr. Anquo's latest models showed a disturbing pattern. It's almost as if the phenomenon is aware of our efforts. James explained to the assembled commanders. The expansion rate increased by 15% once the alien fleets began arriving. Whatever this thing is, it may be reacting to our resistance. Admiral Tanaka studied the tactical display. Then we need to move faster than it can adapt. How long until the resonance field is ready? 48 hours. Minimum, replied Engineer Cuss of the Builder Consortium, a species of methodical craftspeople who humanity had helped rebuild after a devastating plague of nano-M machines had consumed their industrial infrastructure. We are constructing resonance nodes on every continent, in every ocean, and in orbital positions around the planet. Each node must be calibrated precisely. There is no room for error. The void plague will consume 60% of Earth in 48 hours, Sarah Chin said grimly, reading from her tactical display. Most of the human population will be gone by then. Then we evacuate them, Commander Xylot said immediately. Our medical vessels can hold millions in stasis. The Kronar construction ships can be converted to temporary habitats. The next can store human consciousness digitally if biological evacuation becomes impossible. President Elena Volkov's hologram appeared in the center of the room. Her face was haggarded but determined. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Prioritize children, medical personnel, and anyone with essential knowledge for rebuilding. But I will not leave Earth until the last possible moment. If we are to die, we die fighting for our home. Robert Tanaka felt a surge of pride at his species. Even facing extinction, humans refused to surrender their dignity or their determination. The construction begins across Earth's surface in orbital space. The largest engineering project in galactic history commenced. Teams of mixed species workers labored around the clock, racing against the advancing darkness. In the Pacific Ocean, singing whales positioned massive subsonic generators on the ocean floor while human deep-sea technicians helped calibrate them. The generators were organic technology grown rather than built, and they hummed with the ancient songs of Aquaria. On the African continent, Kronar construction drones worked alongside human engineers to build towering resonance pylons from materials that shouldn't exist. According to human physics, the Kronars had learned exotic matter manipulation from human theoretical physicists who had helped them develop safer mining techniques years ago. Now that knowledge was being used to create structures that could anchor reality itself in orbit. Luminar energy beings carefully positioned stellar collectors around Earth's equator. These devices would capture and focus solar energy, amplifying it into frequencies that could reinforce the fabric of spacetime. Human astrophysicists worked directly with the luminars, their bodies protected by environmental suits while they floated alongside beings of living light. Lieutenant Marcus Webb found himself in Antarctica working with Zephyrian atmospheric specialists to install pressure frequency generators. Beneath the ice, the Zephyrians were gaseous beings who existed in hermetically sealed suits, but they moved with grace and precision. Their technology designed to work in any atmospheric condition. Your people helped us breathe when our atmosphere turned toxic, one Zephyrian named Wind Whisper told Marcus as they calibrated a generator. You shared your atmospheric reclamation technology freely, asking nothing in return. My clutch children exist because of human generosity. I work now so that your clutch children may also survive. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He thought of his niece and nephew currently being evacuated to a Veyan medical ship. The idea that they might have a future because of kindness shown decades ago by people he'd never met. It was almost too much to process. The Void fights back. On the 41st hour of construction, disaster struck. The Void plague suddenly surged forward with terrifying speed, consuming the entire Indian subcontinent in less than an hour. 2 resonance nodes that had been 90% complete vanished into the darkness, along with the mixed species construction teams working on them. Among the dead were 3 Kronar engineers, a Luminar energy coordinator, and 7 human technicians. Their sacrifice was mourned across the fleet. But there was no time to stop. The pattern has changed, Dr. Akono announced grimly to the command staff. The Void is targeting our construction sites. It's definitely reactive. We need to accelerate the timeline. That's impossible, Engineer Keys protested. The calibration process alone requires. We don't have time for perfection, General Morrison interrupted. We need functional. Even if it's not optimal, can we make it work in 24 hours? A long silence filled the room. Then Queen Kyrix spoke, her clicking voice determined. The Kronar know how to work fast. We learned efficiency from humans during our rescue. We will complete our portions in 18 hours. The Luminar Collective will accelerate our energy positioning. Archon Solarius added, even at risk to our own matrix stability. One by one, each species committed to an impossible timeline. They would push their technology, their bodies, and their people to the absolute limit, because that's what humans had done for them, because that's what friends did for each other. The final hours, Sarah Chin hadn't slept in 3 days. She coordinated the defense of construction sites from her station on Perseus, directing human and alien vessels to intercept Void tendrils that were beginning to actively seek out the resonance nodes. The phenomenon was definitely conscious now, or at least responsive. It was learning, adapting, fighting back. Admiral Tanaka moved through the Unity's promise like a ghost, checking on every station, every crew member. He paused at the communications console where Sophie Martinez was relaying instructions to 17 different species in their native languages, her training in Xenol linguistics finally proving invaluable. Lieutenant Roberts said gently. When did you last eat? Sophie looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Admiral, there's too much to coordinate. The Meridians need harmonic adjustments. The Turks are requesting quantum entanglement parameters. Sophie, his voice was firm but kind. You cannot help anyone if you collapse. Take 20 minutes rest. That's an order. She nodded reluctantly and left her station. Robert sat down in her place and looked at the communication board lighting up with messages from across the fleet. Every species was working beyond their limits. Every individual was giving everything they had. He thought of Maria Santos, still alive on the Veyan flagship, probably working just as hard as these young officers despite her age. He thought of all the humans who had helped alien species over the decades, never expecting reward. And he thought of all the aliens who had dropped everything to race across the galaxy to save a species that most of them had never even met. This was the legacy humanity had built, not through conquest or commerce, but through compassion activation. At hour 47, with 73% of Earth consumed by the void plague and time running out, Dr. Ayanquo stood before the master control console. Every resonance node was in place. Every frequency generator was calibrated as precisely as the rush timeline allowed. Representatives from all 67 species stood or floated or existed in their various forms around him, watching. This is it, James said. His voice broadcast across every ship in the fleet and every emergency shelter on Earth. We're either going to seal the dimensional breach and save Earth, or we're going to catastrophically fail and accelerate the planet's destruction. Either way, in the next 10 minutes, we'll know. He looked around at the gathered aliens and humans. I want to thank every species here. You came when we called. You risked everything for us. Whatever happens, humanity will never forget that you answered, Commander. Xylith placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. We came because you taught us to answer when someone calls for help. Now let us see if the lesson holds. James nodded and turned to the console, activating resonance field in 3, 1. Now he pressed the activation sequencer across Earth, in the oceans, and on every continent, in orbit and in the atmosphere. Hundreds of resonance nodes activated simultaneously. Each generated its specific frequency. Gravitational harmonics from the Kroner nodes, stellar energy from the Luminar collectors, atmospheric pressure waves from the Zephyrian generators, quantum entanglement pulses from the Turk synchronizers, and dozens more, all different, all unique to the species that built them. The Meridian Harmony coordinators began their work there, musical consciousness weaving through the disparate frequencies like a conductor before an orchestra. The individual notes began to align, to resonate, to harmonize, and then it happened. The entire planet began to sing. It was not a sound that human ears could hear directly, but every person felt it in their bones, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to come from reality itself. The resonance field manifested as visible waves of multicolored light that rippled across Earth's surface and through the orbital space around it. Where the light touched the void plague's darkness, something remarkable occurred. The darkness began to retreat. It's working, Sarah Chin shouted from Perseus. The dimensional breach is closing. The void is collapsing. The darkness that had consumed 3/4 of the planet began to pull back, flowing in reverse like a film played backwards as it retreated. It left behind the landscapes it had consumed, damaged and scarred, but still existing, cities that had vanished, reappeared, oceans that had been erased, flowed back into existence, mountains, forests, deserts, all of it returning as the dimensional tier sealed itself, the resonance field intensified, the harmony between 67 different technologies, creating something that was greater than the sum of its parts. It was a symphony of science and compassion, each note contributed by a species that remembered, being helped when they needed it most. In the war room, President Vyulov wept openly on the Unity's promise. Admiral Tanaka felt his legs give out and sank into his command chair, overwhelmed with relief. Across the fleet, celebrations erupted in 67 different forms: Vayan songs, Chronar drum clicks, Luminar light displays, human cheers. The Void Plague fought to maintain its grip on reality, but it was losing. The resonance field was too strong, too perfectly harmonized. After 15 minutes of sustained activation, the last tendril of darkness retreated into the dimensional breach, and then with a final pulse of multicolored light, the breach sealed completely. Earth was saved. After the celebration lasted for hours, but eventually the hard work of assessment began. Earth had been damaged. Approximately 40% of the planet's infrastructure was destroyed or heavily damaged, but the land itself remained. The ocean still flowed. Atmosphere still sheltered life. More importantly, 7.3 billion humans had survived thanks to the rapid evacuation efforts coordinated by the alien fleet. Casualties had been limited to those caught in the initial outbreak before anyone understood the threat. It was a miracle, though Admiral Tanaka knew it was not divine intervention that had saved them. It was friendship. On the bridge of Unity's promise, Robert watched as the alien fleets began to depart, each species left behind volunteers to help with reconstruction, along with technology and resources to speed Earth's recovery. But most of their ships had homes and responsibilities of their own to return to. Commander Xylith appeared on his viewscreen one final time. Admiral Tanaka, the Vayan fleet is preparing to return home, but we leave behind 50 medical vessels and 10,000 volunteers. They will stay as long as Earth needs them. You've already given us so much, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. You owe us nothing more. Xylith smiled, another expression. The Villians had learned from humans. You say this after you taught us that helping others is never about debts owed. It is about who we choose to be. We choose to be the species that remembers. We choose to be the species that answers when friends call, just as you taught us. Similar conversations played out with every departing fleet. The Chronars left construction equipment and engineers. The Luminars provided energy technology that would power Earth's reconstruction. For centuries, the Zephyrins helped repair the damaged atmosphere. The Turks shared shield technology to prevent future catastrophes. 67 species each, leaving behind a piece of themselves to help humanity rebuild a new understanding. 3 months later, Sarah Chin stood in the same observation deck where she had watched the Void Plague consume her world, but now Earth was healing. The scars remained, but reconstruction was progressing faster than anyone had thought possible, aided by alien technology and volunteers from Across the galaxy, Lieutenant Marcus Webb joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee. Commander, I've been thinking. What we learned from all this, I mean. It's kind of profound. What's that? Marcus, well, for decades humanity went around helping other species without expecting anything back. A lot of people thought we were wasting resources, being too idealistic, but when we needed help, 67, civilizations dropped everything to save us. That's not idealism, that's investment. We invested in compassion, and it paid back when we needed it most. Sarah smiled. My grandmother used to say something similar. She called it casting bread upon the waters. You give without expecting return, but somehow when you most need it, the bread comes back to you. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. The thing is, Commander, we didn't plan it that way. We helped those species because it was right, not because we thought we'd need them someday. Exactly, Sarah said. That's what made it meaningful. The Vians, the Kronars, all of them, they came because they knew our help was genuine. If we'd helped them expecting payment, they wouldn't have felt the same obligation to return the favor. She gestured to Earth below, where human and alien workers labored side by side to rebuild cities. We learned something important too, Marcus. We learned that asking for help isn't weakness. We humans have always prided ourselves on being the helpers, the rescuers, but being willing to be rescued, to accept help with humility and gratitude that takes strength too. In his quarters, Admiral Tanaka added a new item to his collection. It was a small crystalline sculpture given to him by the next collective before they departed. It showed 67 different figures, each representing a species that had answered Earth's call, all surrounding and supporting a small blue sphere. On the base was inscribed in 17 languages, including English, "What you give freely returns tenfold." Dr. James Ekone published his final report on the void plague and the resonance field solution. The paper was co-authored by scientists from 67 species, each contributing their unique understanding. It became the most widely distributed scientific document in galactic history, not just for its technical innovations, but for what it represented: cooperation on a scale never before achieved. President Vav addressed the United Earth government and via broadcast the entire planet. We have faced extinction and survived not through our weapons or our walls, but through the friendships we built when times were good. We must never forget this lesson. We must continue to be the species that helps others, not because we expect reward, but because it is right. And we must also learn to accept help when it is offered with grace and gratitude. The speech resonated across Earth and beyond. Humanity had been saved by its own legacy of compassion, and that legacy would define its future. The message spreads across the galaxy. Species that had not been part of the rescue effort heard the story of Earth's salvation. They learned how 67 civilizations had traveled vast distances to save a planet they had no strategic interest in, motivated solely by remembered gratitude. The story spread like wildfire through the galactic community. It became a teaching example, a cultural touchstone, reminder that kindness was not weakness, but strength. Young members of species that had helped Earth grew up hearing about the time their ancestors answered humanity's call. It became a point of pride, a cultural identity. We are the species that remembers. We are the species that answers. And throughout the Galaxy, other species began to adopt. Humanity's philosophy, help those in need, expect nothing in return, build bridges instead of wall, because someday you might be the one who needs saving, and the bridges you built will carry help to your door. Sophie Martinez received a promotion and was assigned to the newly created Galactic Cooperation Bureau, an organization dedicated to coordinating mutual aid between species. Her first task was to create a database of needs and capabilities across hundreds of civilizations so that when crisis emerged, help could be mobilized quickly and efficiently. The database was named the Santos Protocol after Captain Maria Santos, whose actions 30 years ago had set in motion the chain of events that ultimately saved Earth. Maria attended the dedication ceremony, now 74 and walking with a cane, but her eyes still bright with the same compassion that had driven her to risk everything for the Villians decades ago. I never imagined, Maria said in her speech, that helping the Villians would lead to this. I just saw people suffering and knew I had to try to help. That's all any of us can do, see suffering and respond with compassion. If we all do that, if every species does that, then we create a galaxy where no one faces extinction alone. The assembled representatives from dozens of species rose in applause, each expressing it in their own cultural way, creating a symphony of appreciation that echoed through the hall. Legacy. 5 years after the Void Plague, Earth had not just recovered but thrived. The reconstruction had incorporated alien technology, creating hybrid systems that were more advanced than anything humanity had possessed before the crisis, but more importantly, Earth had become a center for galactic cooperation. The Unity's promise was decommissioned and converted into a memorial museum anchored in orbit where it had commanded the defense of Earth. During humanity's darkest hour, visitors from across the galaxy came to walk its halls and learned the story of how kindness saved a world. Admiral Robert Tanaka, now retired, served as the museum's director. He gave tour personally to visiting school groups, human and alien alike, showing them the command center where species coordinated, the communication station where Sophie Martinez had sent the call for help, the observation deck where the first alien ships had been spotted arriving. Remember, he would tell the children, this museum exists because people, human and alien, chose compassion over convenience. They chose to help when it would have been easier to ignore the problem. Some of you will grow up to be leaders, scientists, engineers, whatever you become. Remember that the most important choice you'll ever make is whether to help someone in need. Choose wisely, because that choice echoes across generations. The children would listen, witty human children, standing beside Villian, Kronar, Zephyrian, and dozens of other species, all learning together the lesson that had saved Earth and reshaped the galaxy. As the 67 species had answered Earth call, so too did humanity continue to answer the calls of others. The cycle of compassion continued, expanding outward like ripples from a stone cast into still water, and in the observation sphere of a distant archive vessel, Curator Selix of the Solari Archives added a final entry to the debts of kindness ledger. But this entry was different from all the others. It didn't record a debt owed or a debt paid. Instead, it simply read, on this date, 67 species proved that kindness is not a transaction but a transformation. When Humans helped others, they did not create debts, they created friends. And when humanity called friendship answered, let this be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned what it means to be a community. The entry was marked not as a closed account, but as an ongoing story, because the lesson of Earth's salvation was not that kindness pays back, it was that kindness changes everything. And that story, that lesson, would continue to echo across the stars for generations to come. 67 species had remembered, 67 species had answered, and in doing so, they had shown the entire galaxy what truly mattered when facing the darkness. Not weapons, not walls, not wealth, but the simple, profound power of remembering who helped you and choosing to help them in return.